Liz Truss setting a record. I'm sure she didn't want to. She is the shortest serving Prime Minister in British history, and she has got that title by quite a way. Joining me live is the Director of Freshwater Strategy, Dr. Mike Turner, back here in the studio this week. We only spoke to you 2 days ago, Mike, but here we are this morning with somewhat of a surprise with Liz Truss. The writing was on the wall earlier this week, but I've got to say, when I woke up at about 3:30 this morning to see that she'd resigned after leaning over the chamber and telling Keir Starmer that she was a fighter, didn't expect this 2-minute resignation speech.
Yeah, and it's quite a trail that she's left in her wake as well. I mean, we're 45 days into her prime ministership, and looks like she'll crack the 50-day mark, but it'll be 70 days short of the next guy called George Canning, I believe. But you know, in that period of time, that's right. So look, during that period of time, it's been pretty tumultuous. We have seen a market reaction to a budget that was meant to be mini. It wasn't so mini. We've lost a Chancellor. There's been several calls among Conservatives who ended up supporting her to resign. We had a Cabinet Minister resign herself. It's been a pretty chaotic period.
Well, to say the very least, I would say. Now, let's get to the 1922 committee. I mean, rules are rules until they're not. The 1922 committee has been quite flexible with them over the last couple of months. 3 prime ministers in 3 months. There was a long process to elect Liz Truss. That hasn't worked out so well. So now it's going to take a week. So what is the process? Is there now a question about the wisdom of, internal party democracy, that the membership actually elects leaders?
Yeah, well, certainly there's been a lot of criticism about whether members should elect leaders. Remember, it was the Labour Party membership that elected Jeremy Corbyn. It was the Conservative Party membership who elected Liz Truss. Look, I think this is a smart decision from the 1922 to keep it as short as possible. I think at this point in time, there's a lot of uncertainty going on. They have raised the threshold up from 15 to 100 MPs required to support a candidate. Now, that's going to have implications for who can get on. Ultimately, if you're not prepared, if you're not someone who has already achieved 100 votes among members of Parliament already, then it's unlikely that you're going to be able to get on. I'm not making any predictions because that would be a very silly thing to do. Yeah. But you know, that will severely restrict the number of people who are really capable of getting into the final two.
Okay, let's talk about the candidates, because it looks like Boris Johnson has given quotes to the paper. He'll put his hand up. No surprise, really. I spoke to Lord Edward Lister, one of his biggest backers in the UK, when I was there just a couple of weeks ago, and he said, never say never. He thought that Boris could come back. He wasn't, predicting it this quickly, but he certainly thought that was the case. Now, there are a lot of Boris Johnson backers, but we know how controversial he is. David Davis, who's a former Conservative Party leader, has already come out with a shot across the bow saying he's not the unifying leader. We've heard from Stanley Johnson, Boris Johnson's dad, this morning on this very channel, saying that he would be the unifying leader. And then there's Rishi Sunak, who's controversial in himself. So where does this all go? If you could give us some kind of sense of what's happening.
Yeah, well, politicians spinning, eh? But no, look, I think things that we should know so far is that Boris Johnson is at the moment in the lead in terms of declared candidates. He actually already has at the halfway mark. He's already up to 50 declared in support. Rishi Sunak's closely followed behind, and Penny Mordaunt is also declared an interest, and there's several MPs that have come out and supported her. I would really put those 3 as the main contenders. There is some talk about Ben Wallace. I doubt that, although it is a possibility, and Jeremy Hunt has ruled himself out in what I think is a quite smart move to try and keep his job as Chancellor, whoever gets in. I do think there is a possibility that Boris Johnson meets the 100 mark.
He's already at 50%.
That's right. And Rishi has already proven that he can do it as well. So what we're hearing is that there is a bit of behind backroom doors dealing going on between the candidates in order to try and prevent there being what could be a tumultuous contest next week. Yeah. The ballot closes on Monday. The nomination is closed on Monday, and the ballot opens in the evening, and it closes again essentially this time next week.
It is deeply humiliating for Liz Truss, I think, on a personal level, and on a human-to-human level, you've got to feel a little bit sorry for her. I mean, the comparisons going around this morning, the British press is brutal, is that a lettuce has a longer shelf life than Liz Truss. Also, the other hot take was that Boris Johnson's COVID lockdown parties lasted longer than Liz Truss' tenure as Prime Minister. She was a darling of the Conservatives. They love her on the right. What does she have that we just can't see? Because I've got to say, she didn't look commanding or confident from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of critical mistakes. Firstly, if you're going to put through such a radical set of policy changes in one go, it's not to say that individually those policies weren't good ideas, but to do it all in one go came across as not thoughtful, didn't come across as essentially someone who was capable of bringing the markets with her. And I think ultimately where she failed was she didn't double down in some of those areas. She didn't think in advance about how people might react to her decisions.
She doubled down until she didn't.
Well, yeah, she ended up sacking a chancellor. Yeah, she ended up kind of U-turning on most of those policies.
Also, you know, those inside will say he's a really smart guy.
Yeah, I've heard the same.
And he's working against, essentially, the first thing he does as Chancellor is work against Britain's central bank.
Yeah. It's remarkable, but what I feel was there was a rush at the beginning to push too much of this out, and what that meant was there was little thought about how to delicately deal with the economic situation, which was deteriorating in the UK, and the politics, you know, has taken her down.
Right. What are your friends saying in the UK to you right now, as you sit here in, you know, what looks like the promised land of Australia right now?
Certainly. Well, I'll certainly be applying for citizenship pretty soon.
Okay. Mike, great to talk to you, even in these circumstances.
Thank you.
See you soon.